Hello to all of you beautiful humans. And here we are again. It's Claudia from the Recover from HA support group and the beautiful Jacqueline Byrne, a clinical psychotherapist specialized in eating disorder recovery. And today we are going to be talking about expectations specifically in recovery. But first of all, welcome, Jacqueline. Always a pleasure of seeing you. How have you been?
I've been so well, Claudia. It's always such a joy to be here with you. Thank you for having me back again.
Oh, it's you are on high demand, and it's always a pleasure having you, and especially for me to seeing you. But tell me, Jacqueline, expectations in recovery. What does it mean for you? Expectations in recovery. I would like to hear your point of view to before getting started.
It struck me how important it is to consider our expectations because it really sets the scene for what we're likely to experience in the process of recovery. That if we're expecting, for example, one thing I notice people talk to me about a lot is that recovery is harder than they expected it to be, or there might be some losses or compromises that come with it that they didn't anticipate. And that can sometimes lead to the feeling of questioning whether it's still the right avenue for them or whether they're still committed to it. Whereas while we can never know, we don't have a crystal ball, we can't know exactly what we're in for, even just asking ourselves the question, what is my expectation going into recovery, or even working with this practitioner or getting to this weight goal, maybe a restored weight goal to try and get my period back. What are my expectations? And then as we move through that process, we can be clearer when we're in conflict with those expectations, why that might be feeling more difficult, and perhaps talk about what realistic expectations would be as well.
Such an interesting topic because everyone has different expectations when they come into the recovery journey. And it's not for us to assume what a person wants, but it's really important for that person to have the conversation with herself and start asking herself the deeper questions. Why am I doing this? Yes, sometimes it's because they want to get the period back. Sometimes it's because they want to have a baby. Sometimes it's simply because they've reached a point where they want to feel free when it comes to food, the training, and so on and so forth. But first of all, is understanding the whys, and also understanding the fact that maybe it's not always going to be possible to reach full recovery within a 6 months time frame or a 12 months time frame. But it's also making peace with the fact that feeling 50% better compared to last month, feeling 30% better compared to a couple of years ago is still a massive win. So I love how you started this whole subject, and it's all about talking about expectations and really understanding why someone decides to recover. And I have a question for you, actually. When someone comes to you and they say, look, Jacqueline, I've been gaining the weight and my anxiety has been going through the roof. I don't even know if I'm doing it correctly, if I'm doing recovery correctly, or if it's even worth it, because I didn't have this level of anxiety a couple of months ago. So is it worth it for me to do this? What would you say to that woman, to that person?
It's such a common situation. It's a really good example to bring up. And probably in part, looking at expectations is going to be really relevant to that, because if we expected that once we gained the weight, we would feel better mentally in our mental health, or we would, once we even got a period back, that would be such a relief, that'd be so exciting, that's like problem solved, nothing else matters. We have to appreciate the parts of our story that we might have abandoned going into the expectations of recovery, and the assumptions that we've made that the even physical health restoration will, like how much that might be helpful for mental health or for our behavior, and what other parts of life. You know, sometimes going through an eating disorder and HA, it can become an available scapegoat for other parts of life. Like, feeling dissatisfied in our sense of purpose, maybe in relationships. So we can put a lot down to what's probably my eating disorder. It's probably because my health isn't optimal right now. That's probably why these things are happening. And maybe in recovery, it's exposed that there's more than meets the eye with our life situations as well. There are other things that need to be addressed in slightly different ways. We get more clarity on that when recovery is evolving, because we can distinguish between what is still an eating disorder realm and maybe what is in other parts of our life. And other people scapegoat the eating disorder too, I want to add. It's a really popular one to pin a lot of things on. So that might, for other people as well, there might have been expectation put on us that once you gain the weight, you'll be able to concentrate better, you'll be more productive at your work, you'll be happier, you'll be easier going. Whereas maybe, as an example, someone moves further into recovery and actually finds they need to set clearer boundaries with their family, or they need to be more self-assertive, which isn't the outcome that people expected from them moving towards wellness.
Absolutely. And I had a lovely conversation with a client of mine that she was just starting her recovery journey just last month. And I was very transparent with her. And I said, possibly in the first months, all your symptoms and your anxiety, it's really going to increase. You're going to reach threshold. And you can see it from her eyes that she was so scared by hearing this sentence coming out of my mouth. But the reality is that normally it gets slightly worse before it starts getting better. Because when you start the recovery journey, it's all about pushing through the barriers and changing things that have been feeling so comfortable for the longest time, and maybe even forever for some people out there. And as you mentioned, sometimes it's hard also for the people around them, because once you learn how to set boundaries, and once you learn to stand on your ground, then people are not going to be always happy about it. And also realizing that maybe your life isn't perfect even without an eating disorder, it's quite confronting. How do you juggle that? How do you juggle a situation where you see someone being confronted by the reality that without the eating disorder, their life is not perfect anyway?
It's multifaceted, because people that are more prone to developing eating disorders might already be more perfectionistic, more black and white thinking. So without even realizing it, we've fallen into that old habit again, maybe, of thinking, oh, when I'm recovered and I've got my period and I have protected my fertility, it will look like this, and maybe just set the bar that much higher than someone else might have. So it can be confronting to realize that might have occurred, and we might have put a lot of additional pressure on ourselves in that scenario as well. But the other thing that really comes to mind is around growth mindset. And if we come up against the expectations we've realized we've had and see that as a reason to discontinue recovery, or just feel really stuck with that, the other alternative is to understand that part of being human and evolving is readjusting our expectations and reflecting on the expectations we had and why we had them. I really believe in the intelligence of the subconscious, and sometimes we set expectations so we can feel safe enough to start something, because human beings we're wired to avoid risk and harm. So if we have a mental picture of, well, if I do this, it'll probably look like that, that'll probably be the outcome. Okay, I think I can do that, I'll take a step forward. If we didn't have any of that scaffolding, it might have been too intimidating to even begin. So we needed to believe in that expectation. It's not a negative thing that it wasn't completely correct or how it eventuated. But somewhere amongst that process, as we're taking those steps, we're a bit closer to the horizon, and we can see, oh, this isn't going to end up looking how I thought it was going to look. We have an opportunity to readjust our expectation and grow with that and reform that. And that can be such a gift, that can be really expansive.
And I don't want to simplify, but I've been thinking about going on holiday to Greece, right? And there is this all expectations about going on holiday. And Greece, oh my God, have you checked the pictures from Greece on Instagram? It looks amazing. The reality is that once you get there, most of the time there is a strike when it comes to catching a ferry. So lots of delays during the trip. There is lots of traffic, lots of pollution. People don't speak the language. Most people in Greece, they don't speak English. So the expectation is not exactly how someone might have pictured it in their mind when they book the holiday, but they're still in Greece. And they're going to still get to a location that it's absolutely perfect. Perfect for that day, perfect for that moment, until they're going to hit another roadblock, until they're going to hit another strike. And then they're going to reach another perfect beach. And they're going to have a moment where they can just chill, relax, and enjoy the scenario. And I think that sometimes the journey is very much like that. It's not a final destination. I'm going to be completely recovered. So my expectation is that I'm going to reach full freedom. I'm going to love my body. I'm going to get my period back. I'm going to have my baby at the first try. And that's what I have pictured in my mind. And that's exactly what it's going to happen if I follow Claudia's and Jacqueline's advices, for example. No, it's more like going on holiday in Greece. You're going to have the perfect Santorini, the perfect Mykonos, and a very crowded city in between, and so some strikes in the middle. Would you agree with this very perfect metaphor?
I love that metaphor. I'm laughing. That's wonderful. I'm even thinking how many strikes there are in recovery, and how many delays, and more discomfort than we anticipated. It's a very apt analogy. And even with that, maybe in recovery, when we maybe literally and figuratively take the photo that we put on Instagram about, life now, like, look at me with my babies, or my my freedom, my acceptance of my body. It's a true moment, but it also doesn't capture before that, after that. There's still stresses about paying bills, or the car's broken down, or the people on the lower level are doing a renovation and going to make a lot of noise for the next 18 months. The difficulties of life still continue, and it can be part of that perfectionism and polarizing to want to edit that out. And because we so want people to get to recovery, I think that victory story is so easily shared, and again, most of the time isn't untrue in what's being shared, but it doesn't mean that life perfection comes along with it as a package, rather like Greece, and seeing the photo on Instagram and thinking that one angle of that beach with the crystal clear water behind the person is all there is to see.
Absolutely. There is actually a reel that is going around on Instagram that cracks me up every time I see it, because normally there are people like taking this perfect picture in this beautiful place, no one is there, and then they turn the camera and there is like a crowd of tourists sitting down, having their sandwiches, taking the same pictures. So it's the way that you look at it, right? From one angle, it can be perfect. From the other angle, it's very imperfect, very murky, very crowded, very noisy. And that's exactly what recovery can be like, depending on what you want to see as well. And talking about what we want to see, shall we also mention expectations of recovery based on what we see on social media? Because recovery in social media is portrayed in a way that it doesn't really help. Sometimes, actually, it's the recovery that is portrayed is very transparent and can be absolutely supportive. But sometimes you see a woman that is in a very emaciated body and is feeling miserable, and then the picture next to it, that woman is all of a sudden surrounded by friends, eating a cake, not even eating a salad or like something that we normally eat every single day, like eating a cake, dressed with a beautiful dress, and now I'm thriving. So you see the A and the Z, but you don't see all the other letters in the middle. And sometimes that can be confronting, because people, then they start their recovery journey, may be pushed by a picture like that, And they think, well, maybe I'm doing something completely wrong because I definitely don't feel this way and I definitely cannot eat cake. Maybe I cannot even hang out with friends. So how would you respond to this pressure, also
Mm.
recovery, attached to social medias and the media that we consume?
I'm so glad you brought this up because it is, I think, so in us as well. I mentioned how we want to inspire others, so we want to sell the best of the experience from a really good-hearted place. It's also in our nature as humans to find the narrative arc in our lives, to want to storytell, and we seek for a climax and a resolution and a morale. And so we fit our experiences, whether it's our love story or our recovery story or the story of being a parent, into this template of how we're going to narrate that experience, which often doesn't leave enough room for the complexities and multidimensionality of all that it is to be human. So we fit in, okay, the beginning scene of recovery, that's when I was struggling, and then I found the right treatment team, and then it was hard, but I learned all this stuff out of it. And that's the nice, tidy story that we feel primed to tell. And the nature, even visually, of social media really invites that along with it. It's, you get to show a couple of pictures. What pictures do you choose? The pictures have to tell a story. And the polarity, again, is it's so accessible. It's easy to understand that in a short amount of time. So we pick the pictures that are going to represent that. Whereas in truth, anyone's recovery story would probably be a tome and many messy scrapbooks, and more than, it'd take days to read through it all, and it would be impossible to collate it in a succinct way. But I do hear often from women that they are comparing themselves, and I like that expression of don't compare your insides to other people's outsides, because they're comparing their internal journey with what they're assuming is the entirety of someone's experience represented on social media. And because it's more painful, it's messier, it's stalling, they feel like it's wrong. And with that narrative that's established, even from loved ones around us, there can be pressure to make it more positive, like find the lesson in it, turn it into something with meaning. Whereas sometimes it's just really hard for a long time. Sometimes there's no progress. Sometimes it's like a quasi relapse or a full relapse. And then it feels like it's back to square one, and it's lost the initial excitement it had, or the belief and trust we had in recovery in the beginning. It feels more mundane. It can be all of those things and still be completely worth it, and so much more real and rich as a result.
You expressed it so beautifully. I have absolutely nothing to add to that. Um, just actually another thing another topic that I would like to cover before we close this conversation. If someone will come to you and said, look, I don't have a period. I would like to get pregnant. I've had an eating disorder for decades, and I think that I'm gonna choose IVF instead of recovery because it feels easier. Well, yeah, it feels easier, let's say. What would you respond to that? How would you
Mm,
remind that person that maybe the ultimate goal is not only having a baby?
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Very much expectations, even expectations of IVF would be a whole conversation to have. The way that IVF can be advertised, and the social understanding that can be held colloquially of, oh, well, there's always IVF. I've literally heard people say that regarding someone's infertility struggles, that, you try and then there's always IVF, as if that's just a quick visit to the clinic and then you walk away with a baby, which is certainly not the case for anyone that's been through that process. Um, but in wanting to become a mother, what we're being called into is the most visibility on self-responsibility for any endeavor we could be entering into, that we come into contact, it is requested of us to come into contact with all parts of who we are and all parts of our stories that we might have been able to abandon and avoid more easily before exploring becoming a mother, so that IVF may or may not end up resulting in a pregnancy and maybe a baby. But what then? What do you do with being healthy enough to be a mum and mother them for a lifetime? And what about you and the inner little one within you that's been waiting for freedom?
Yeah. And look, I've been also very transparent in terms of my battle with chronic pain, and any type of disorder can really, I don't know how to express myself right now, but can also make the motherhood journey that much difficult. And so it's also about asking ourselves the question, which kind of mothers do we want to be? Which kind of women do we want to be when we have the baby? Because if you have the energy, if you have vitality, then it's so much more fun, instead of actually being hyper focused on your body, food, training, that obviously they all lead to higher chances of developing anxiety and depression, especially in the postpartum phase when we are so sensitive to all the changes in hormones. So thank you for talking about the expectation, for addressing the IVF component. And it's just a reminder for all the women out there to really ask themselves, why are you into this? What do you want to get out of this journey? And do you think that it's worth it, even though before getting to Santorini in Greece, you have to sit in Athens for a couple of nights just waiting for the strike to end? And you have enough support to find a hotel in Athens so you can sleep peacefully while you wait for the strike to end. I'm just gonna cruise on this metaphor. What can I say?
There's a lot in it. We could use that for years. I love it.
It's such in a holiday mode for some reasons today.
It's selling Greece to me too. It's selling pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it must be this new chair, by the way. I'm so proud of it. I have decided to invest in a real office chair. So as you can see right now, I'm really laid back, enjoying and loving this conversation with you, Jacqueline. And I could go on forever, but I know that it's time to wrap it up. So thank you so much for being here with us, Jacqueline. We're going to have you again next month. And if women would love to find you, where can they access all the beautiful informations that you put out there?
I love to interact with people on Instagram. I'm wings_and_quill. Or you can email me at jacqueline@wingsandquill.com, or check out my website at wingsandquill.com.
Easy, Wings and Quills. Love it. Jacqueline, thank you so much. And we will see you next month. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.